Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Discussions of Darkness. This week, I wanted to give everyone a piece of advice that I'm taking directly from my own table, and this is something that I honestly wish that I'd done earlier in my career as a storyteller, so hopefully this helps both storytellers and players alike who have not been doing this, but think it might be a good addition to your Chronicle prep. Now, let's go back to the beginning. For the scenario, you are getting ready to start a new Chronicle. Everyone has fresh characters, the sheets have just been finished, everyone's been poring over their merits, triple checking their numbers, and everything seems ready to roll. Of course, at this point, you as a storyteller are going to collect everybody's sheets, you're going to look them over, you're going to make sure they spent all of their points right, all the dots add up, and there's nothing hinky on them that you either told folks not to have, or you're wondering how it is they were able to get this at creation. Normally, what you do at that point is you hand all the sheets back, and you get ready for session 1. But there is something that I would actually recommend as a way to make sure that everything functions the way we all think it functions before game, and that is something that I'm referring to as the stress test. In short, you're going to have players take these characters either as a group or individually. However you want to do this is up to you. And you're going to run them through scenarios. These scenarios may have nothing to do with the upcoming Chronicle, or if you want to get fancy with it, you could take the advice I had earlier for running the prequel, and you could make that part of it. Either just a fun beginning session that doesn't have anything to do with the ongoing story, but is useful for making sure that the character functions the way players and you as the storyteller think the character should function. Now, for a stress test, what you want to do is you want to conceive a scenario where the major skills, powers, abilities of these characters come into play, and where players get used to sitting in the driver's seat, essentially. This is the equivalent of them being on a closed course before they go out into an actual race, or just practicing in the sparring cage before they step into the match with their actual opponent. And the reason that I suggest you might want to have different scenarios for different players is that it's easier to construct ideal scenarios that will test those characters' specific attributes and abilities. Because yes, they're all going to be working together as part of a group in whatever the ongoing game is, but not every character is going to participate in every situation equally, so it's important to make sure that when their specialty comes up, they know what they're doing. On the other hand, it's also a good idea to make sure all players know how all aspects of the game work so that when things do happen, they understand what their options are. But getting out of generalities, let's say, for example, one member of the squad, whatever game you're playing, has decided they're going to be the brute, they're the bruiser, they're the combat monster. When things go bad, they're the ones who dishes out the punishment. That's a very important role to have because combat is lethal in World and Chronicles of Darkness games. And as such, they need to make sure that their character works the way they think it does. So, run them through a brief combat scenario, either put them in a literal cage match with somebody if they happen to be a brawler. If they're a gunslinger, put them in a situation where they're in a dark alley and a couple of people are trying to mug them, or they have to protect somebody. If they're, let's say, your group has a medic, put them in a situation where they have to provide first aid, where they have to perform surgery, where they have to do any of the things on their sheet that they've built their character to do. And as you go through them, you will find where there are flaws or where there are problems with their general character concept. Maybe, for example, the medic didn't take into account that their character is going to see some really heinous and horrible things, and as such, maybe they want to have a slightly higher willpower to deal with the things that they're witnessing. Maybe they want to not start with a lower morality, clarity, whatever the stat is for the game you're playing, because they need to be able to keep their wits about them and keep their sanity intact if they're going to keep doing this particular job. If you're playing a game where everyone is a supernatural creature, make sure that their powers function the way the player thinks that they function and that they get the results they want. Now, these scenarios, as I mentioned, could just be throwaway one-offs. They could just be a completely unconnected thing that we're just testing how the sheets work, no worries. On the other hand, If something either goes really poorly or really well, it might be engaging enough to add to that character's particular story. And this is why I suggest something from the prequel. Say, for example, you had a character who, to steal examples from my own table, say you had a character who was involved in a shootout in Morocco before they came back to the US over a disagreement as to the policies the establishment had. That could be an interesting part of that character's backstory if you play through that scenario and something really fun happens. Either they take an interesting wound and now the character has a scar they didn't picture them having previously. Perhaps the character does really well. There's a lot of exceptional successes. So this is a story that anyone who survived will hear about. It adds to their reputation when you meet characters from that part of the world or were in the city at that time. Or if things go really badly, maybe it gives them a particular aversion to certain places, certain scenarios. Maybe they now have an association with a specific alcoholic beverage that was served there that they just can't drink anymore, and anyone else who drinks it, it gives them a moment where they have to clench and try not to flash back to that one horrible day. Those things aren't necessary for the purpose of stress testing a sheet, but they can add a lot of fun things to the character's story if you allow this to also act as a storytelling exercise. But that is entirely up to you as either a player or a storyteller, whether you want to add that part of the story to your character, or you really would just rather have this as a mechanical exercise. But if you are planning on doing something from the character's past before they showed up, if things go really sideways and the character ends up dead, or something goes heinously terrible, it's perfectly alright at that point to just have the, and this is a stress dream you were having about it. It didn't actually happen that way. That's just what your brain is painting the scenario because, well, it decided to be mean to you today. Maybe you need to rest a little. You need to quit being quite so stressed about things. Which can feel like a cop-out, but this is one of those of, we haven't been playing the Chronicle yet. The game hasn't even officially started. So give your players an out. Just don't kill them during character creation. We're not here to play Traveler. But if this is something you have done in the past, I would like to hear about it down in the comments. Tell me what some of your oddest stress test stories are. What's a thing you discovered your character could do that you honestly didn't build them to do? It just came out that way. Or someone who thought that they had a great character who was great at a particular task, and it turns out they didn't actually build them to do that, even though they thought they did. But as always, if you have any particular games you'd like me to cover or any particular aspects of the World of Chronicles of Darkness you think would make a good video in the future, leave those in the comments below as well. And as always, make sure to like, share, subscribe, spread the video around. The more views we get, the more people we have following, the better the algorithm treats us, the more likely we'll be able to keep doing this going forward. But till next time, happy gaming, everybody. Thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Discussions of Darkness. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video and sharing it on your own social media to help boost the signal. And if you'd like to help us keep the show and channel going, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. If you have any questions about the topic I covered today, or if you have something you'd like to see covered in a future episode, make sure to leave it in the comments below. Lastly, please check out the link in the video description to browse all of my World and Chronicles of Darkness supplements from Ezekiel Games. So far, we've covered Changeling the Lost, Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Awakening, and Geist the Sin Eaters, in addition to a handful of general supplements that will be useful for any game set in the World or Chronicles of Darkness settings. Thank you in advance for your support. You're the ones who help us keep the lights on, so we don't fade into the shadows.